Sun in the hizzle, all for shizzle dizzle. We got an excellent show here today, and we got one of my esteemed guests here, my partner in crime from the PTS community, Zanzi. What's going on, man?
I'm very good in yourself.
Right on, right on. All right, so we debating the Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade. So past show I had talked about. So I guess let's lay out the premise. What we got lined up, Zanzi?
Well, I thought that it'd be interesting to start by reminding ourselves and the listeners about what exactly it is that Roe versus Wade said, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I've researched it recently, and I didn't know at all before. But in just in sorry, I'm just gonna for some reason the streaming started on my phone. So yeah,
Okay.
do you want to take a shot at it? Do you know what Roe versus Wade was stating, or no?
Break it down, because yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So basically, what it was saying is that it was stating that it would be unconstitutional for the states, or any government to restrict access to abortion if this um, if this was not motivated by accompanying state interest.
right.
Now, the concept of accompanying state interest is something I had no idea about what it was, right? So I had to research that too, and it seems that a, it has to be an interest vested in um, something that the government uh, how can I explain? So an interest vested in something that goes along the line of fundamental rights, right? So something uh, if something if a decision like the restriction to uh, the decision to restrict access to abortion
Right.
is to be uh, put in place, right? If you have to
Well,
restrict it,
Zanzi,
then it
okay.
has to be from accompanying interest, from something that is motivated by the protection of a right that's ingrained in the Constitution, right?
Right.
So the court determined there's in Roe versus Wade that there were two reasons that could be considered compelling state interest that would allow to restrict abortion access. And
Right.
those two reasons were either the health of the woman
Right.
that is looking for the abortion. So essentially, that allowed the states to put restrictions on different methods of abortion if those
Hmm.
methods of abortion are deemed to be a risk to the woman receiving the procedure, right? So if someone wanted to perform, and that's a gross over exaggeration, right? But just to put the point in perspective, if someone wanted to perform abortion using coat hangers in
Right.
his garage, well, the state would be allowed to restrict access to those kind of abortion because those
Absolutely.
would be deemed unsafe for the woman, right?
Okay, so Zanzi,
The-
that's
oh,
one
yeah.
aspect, but now,
Well, that's one of the thing that Roe versus Wade would constitute a compelling state interest to restrict abortion, right? That's
right.
one of the aspect on which the state could restrict abortion according to Roe versus Wade. The second aspect of it was to protect the life of the fetus, right?
Right.
And this compelling state interest could be argued only from 24 weeks of pregnancy, because 24 weeks of pregnancy is the point at which the court determined that the fetus would be viable and so that its life could be protected by a compelling state interest. So
Okay.
no, before Roe versus Wade was overturned, no state regulation could be put in place if it was not provably so to protect the woman's life or to protect a fetus life pass before 24 weeks, right?
Right. Right.
So they could put in place laws that would ban abortion after 24 weeks. That they could do. They could ban abortions that could cause damage to the health of the mother or the woman. That they could do, but they could not ban abortions. Let's say at 13 weeks, for no other reason than because they want to, for no other reason, for any other reason than because the method would violate or put in jeopardy the woman's life, right? So that's
Right. Right.
essentially what Roe versus Wade was saying.
Okay. So then let's get started because you mentioned something in the definition. Um, Now, you want to deal with the economics first because, like I said, when the Supreme Court gives it back to the states, we got 50 states. So now they're giving it to the judiciary in each state, meaning they're going to let each state decide. So
Uh-huh.
can you tell me how or why that's a disadvantage?
How or why that's a disadvantage?
Well, meaning so meaning so there's not going to be any ban on abortion. So we do agree with that, correct?
No. So that we can then start with the legislative questions, right?
Okay.
So from what I've searched, because what you hear a lot is something about those trigger laws, right? And trigger laws is a concept that doesn't exist in Canada. So I wasn't aware of
Okay.
what it was, so I had to research it. And from what I understand, in American legislation, states can pass laws that are not enforceable according to the Constitution or according to the Supreme Court, or according to the interpretation of the Constitution through Supreme Court's judgment, if we're to be precise about words, not in my first language. But yes, so they can pass law that would go against those interpretations. And they will not be effective, right? They will not be enforced, those laws. But as soon as the interpretation of the law or the Constitution changes, those laws, which could not be enforced before because of the former interpretation, if they can be enforced under the latter interpretation, then those laws come into effect. And they can come into effect in three kinds of way. The longer way is that it will require government action. So it will require the government of that state to reconvene and bring
Hmm.
back this law onto the agenda and declare with a motion that this law will now be enforced. Now, there's another kind of activation of those trigger law that can take place, and that's activation within 30 days of the interpretation changing. So if the interpretation changed and is not challenged or overturned yet again within 30 days, then those laws that have been that went through the legislation process and got put on the book but were not enforceable, then after 30 days become enforceable. And there are those trigger laws that become enforceable as soon as the interpretation change. So now, if we're talking about what's actually the case right now, um, I have the list in my sources, but
Hmm.
there are there are 13 states with trigger laws, and
Hmm.
of those 13 states, there are six of them, from what I remember, that were with immediate enforcement. So, as of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, there are six states, if my memory is right, that ban now all abortions
Oh.
except for a very few exceptions. Those very few exceptions usually, they range, right, in those six
Hmm.
states, and they range because they are present, those exceptions in all those states. They range from only if the pregnancy threatens the life of the mother, the woman, then the abortion will be accepted, to sometime being accepted in cases of rape or incest. But sometimes it's not in some states, right? Sometimes some states allow it only for if the health of the woman is in the life of the woman is in jeopardy. So yes, some states already have those ban in place now that Roe versus Wade have been overturned. Some of them will in a couple of days. I'm not sure exactly. It was on the 24th, so it's about what 10 days? And I don't know, 14 days. So some will in about 15 days,
Hmm.
and some will only when the government uh, puts forward a motion and vote on that
So
motion to put
right.
those laws
So
into effect.
this backs my argument. So this forces people who want to get an abortion in certain states. Would you not agree?
Well, and that's the thing I wasn't sure about in our previous discussion, right? As to
Hmm.
what those trigger laws said exactly, right? Because it's
Hmm.
fine that you have trigger laws that come into place, but what exactly do they say? So what they do is that they ban all kinds of abortions, essentially, right? But the question is, and my question was, who who is this law enforced on, right? So
Hmm.
is the woman seeking the abortion and getting the abortion the one that's gonna be culpable under the law, or is it the business practicing the abortion that's gonna be culpable under the law, right?
Wait. So you're saying the law is stating that there's punishments? Is there punishments for the abortions, or
Well,
I'm not missing this?
laws are not stating who the punishment is for, right? That those are decisions made by judges. The laws are stating what is a crime, right? And
Right.
then decisions are based on that. And the laws, all those trigger laws, I've read all of them. All those trigger laws, um, they ban businesses from practicing abortions.
Okay.
They do not ban women from getting abortion.
Right.
So
So then
that's in
the
favor of
woman.
that's in favor of your argument, indeed,
Right. So yeah, that's what I'm.
because
Yeah.
because a woman can, in all those instances, get an out of state abortion and come
Hmm.
back and still
Right.
live in our same community. So the only burden that those laws will create is the out of state trip. So as far as the burden that it
Which was my
brings,
argument, saying, yeah,
it
this.
can be
Right.
alleviated, especially, and that's something that if our debate was when it was originally supposed to be, we wouldn't have had. But now that we have it, ethically, that's less of a hurt than it was, because Biden just signed an executive order that, they can't change the law, but what he said is that they would make everything in their power to make it easy for women in those states where it's banned to have those out of state abortion if they need them. So that's
Right.
great. That's
So
all great.
Biden's okay. So basically, he's supporting going to these other states that they will provide for you, as opposed to states you're in that don't. That would have
Exactly,
the
with
trigger.
mobile clinic that could be right at the border, right? So
So I
that's
know you have an objection to that. I know you object to that, though.
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
That would be the best way, in my opinion, to slice the apple in two for everybody to have what they want, right?
so then would you agree this is
That would be a good response to that. If in my opinion, if you want to leave it to the state to determine how they want to regulate abortion in a world where Roe versus Wade is overturned, the
uh-huh.
best move that can be done by either the states, and we'll come to why the states could do that themselves, or by the federal government, is to just make it easier to get those out of states abortion, right? Because
Right.
then everybody gets what they want in the end. But
Right. But
go ahead.
uh, what I think, Zanzi, is there's a bigger picture here. What this does in the long run, it forces enclaves of states that, like I said, we call it here red state, blue states.
Mhm.
Red states, they have what they call Christian values, and blue states, they're more liberal. Like, so you got the conservative states, liberal states. So would you agree that this, in the long run, uh, strategizes enclaves to
Oh no,
where
no, yeah, that's gonna make red states even more different than blue states, and that's
right,
gonna create more division, and
absolutely.
and that's not good.
But somebody might say that the
But
division is already there, though, Sensi, because you got
yeah,
people
no,
who are
it's already
conservative.
there.
Right, it's already
Is
there.
it gonna help alleviate it, or is it gonna make it worse? I think it's gonna make it worse. But the argument here is not
Well, how
about
would it? But how would it
this
make it worse
division,
though?
right?
If
So
people, oh, go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going. I was just asking you, how does it make it worse if a person stands on their liberal views and then other person stands on their conservative views? How
well,
does
okay.
that make it
So
worse? Because the people are going to stand on their views.
objectively, it doesn't. Objectively, it doesn't. But in the context of the name of your country, it doesn't look good. You're supposed to be the United States, not the divided states, right? So
I
yeah, there's
mean,
that, you know. But other than that, yeah, no, you're right. It's not good. It's not bad. Objectively, inherently, it's nothing. But in contrast to the name of your country, it's kind of whoops, a little chink in the armor, right? But
yeah, but most countries, I mean, you might agree to this, have more than two parties. We're the only country in the world that have two parties.
so Canada is
So,
a great example of that, right? We say that we've got more than two parties, but we don't.
okay, good
It's
point.
it's
Good
either
point.
the
Yeah,
liberal or the conservative.
right,
When did any other party got elected in Canada, right? So
right. Good point. Right,
the other
right.
one are there just for show in the end, right? Our and we can get into a debate in the different political party, different political system in the United States versus Canada. But Canada is a system that can easily create dictators through a majority government, right? So
Right.
it's not our democracy is a joke, right? And we're not even we're a democracy, but we're still a monarchy. We're a constitutional monarchy. Our head of state is not Justin
Wow.
Trudeau. Our head of state is the dying queen back in England. So it's that's another subject, though, right? So but
I
yeah,
mean, it's
so
another subject. It can kind of relate because when you say United States, um, I mean, both parties can join the military. Both parties can fight. Both party pay taxes. So yeah, in a sense, yeah, and we share the same economy. We all run off capitalism, mixed economy. But what there are certain little nuances that we might be divided on, and abortion. A lot of religious people don't agree with it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of well, I would say Christian base uh Christian, yeah, Christian fundamental people don't believe in abortion. And so people in the liberal states, which is people who, and it's funny because I would say, I guess it's kind of weird because you got your LGBTQ, your gay community, so they would more fall into the left field, meaning more liberal, which I guess a church would be a good example because you have churches, traditional churches that once upon a time frowned upon gay marriage, homosexual relationships, and then now you got churches embracing it. So I'm just using this as a microcosm to represent a greater macrocosm. A lot of conservatives feel like if you allow the infiltration of the liberal left, then things will change drastically, and the church is a good example.
yeah, no, that I understand that. I the and this this a good example of that is how Quebec is seen in the rest of Canada, right? We're seen as a bunch of racist assholes because um, we conflated protecting our language, French,
Right,
with being afraid of everything that's not like born here 20 generations ago, right?
right,
Because then they might not learn French or they might not speak French, right? So we ban
right.
everything and we look like racist assholes. And to be quite honest, most of us most likely forgot that we weren't racist and that it was about the language, and we just started hating everything that didn't look like us, right? So,
Right.
but is that a good thing, right? Is that a bad thing? Again,
Yeah, but a person can make
inherently,
the argument and
objectively,
say they can
but
make the argument and say, Zanzi, that every nation has a nationalized language. So you gotta, in order for that nation to operate, you have to have a national language. Like when you go to the airport, I got to know where the exit is. I got to know
Oh,
where the
but that's
bathroom
yeah.
is.
The national languages of Canada are French and English,
Right,
right? It's a
right,
bilingual country. But why I was thinking this example is because we're talking about state rights to some extent, right? And the equivalent
right,
of states in the United States would be provinces in Canada, and Quebec is a
right.
provinces.
Okay,
So Canada has both languages as official languages, which makes it so that uh, in order to be an official working in Canada, you have to speak both languages, right?
okay,
Services have to be offered in both languages. Courts have to work in both languages
okay,
in Canada. Now, if you go to provinces, then provinces also have their official languages, right?
okay.
So Quebec is the only province in Canada which has only French as its official language. So
Right,
in Quebec, uh, you only have to speak French to be an official. You only have to learn. Well, you have to learn English to some extent, but basically, you functionally only have to learn French, right?
right.
And uh, but in this, and that's another political story. But at some point, we felt that our language was threatened, and so we created a law that's called the La Loi 101, Law 101, right? And that's
Hmm.
the law of the protection, loi de protection du français, the law to protect French language, and now people are obliged to advertise in French and everything has to be in French. And if you're going to put something in English, it has to be in a font at least 2 times smaller than the one in French, right?
Right.
And it's getting worse in the sense that a new law was passed this year that would make things worse for immigrant population, basically. So that's where we're seen as racist, right?
Right.
And so that's you could argue that that's all right to try and protect our way of life, our language, our French official language as a state, as a province. But there are some
Okay.
laws that are passing that
And that
goes
could be applied here in the U.S. also. Like I said, with the Roe versus Wade,
with
if
abortion instead of languages, right? So
right, 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 absolutely, absolutely. So you have, like you said, I can use the same example where you said people just want to speak French. I can say, well, the Christian population who don't agree with abortion, who don't want to pay their taxes going towards any abortions, and so on and so forth. We want to keep our red states in the red, and y'all can allow whatever blue. I mean, if you believe in abortions, then push that towards the blue states. Now we got Yanga just joined us. I see you unmuted his mic, so I guess that triggered him right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I have some questions. First of all, you're going to have to make that. I see a connection, but that being one of the primary objectives, I really think looking at it, man, we have to see the danger in the reversal of that decision. But the question I had for Zanzi was in Quebec. Now, is that state sponsored? The small font for English language, the love of the French language, is that state sponsored or is that a populist movement?
well,
Like, is
okay,
that
so
state law?
that's a conversation. That's gonna bring off topic, but that's if you're interested in that, I can answer that because it's now today, right in 2022, it's state
Mhm.
sponsored. Back when the first law 101 was introduced at the end of the 70s and the start of the 80s, that was a populist movement. That goes with the whole concept of the tranquil revolution in Quebec, la révolution
Mhm.
tranquille in the 70s,
Mhm.
and the Parti québécois, right? But
Mhm.
it's a whole different story about how French Canadians were basically put into quote unquote servitude by the Catholic Church and used as cheap labor by the Anglo Canadian and American companies coming to institute their
Wow.
industries in Quebec, right? But that's a whole different subject. But the example here, the connection was just that the same way that those laws that are questionable, right? My opinion on those laws, I won't necessarily share them now. I think they're dangerous, but I won't share this. I won't take too much time explaining why. But those laws are contested, right? But those are laws that are there to protect, quote unquote, part of the cultural identity of a state or province, right? So that's the only connection with the abortion. It's a completely different subject with completely different
Well,
ramifications. But those
let
are
me ask
laws
this question
that,
too.
right.
I
If
have
the
another
argument
question.
is that is to, oh no, go ahead, Yanga, yeah.
I have another question related to that. Now, what party controls the political atmosphere in Quebec, and what is a little bit of the background of that party? Because that sounds fascist as fuck. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh
It
well,
it it.
that's very interesting that you would mention that, Yanga. So okay, so I was talking a little bit earlier with Blackson about how in Canada we might have at the federal level multiple parties, but there's really only two: the Conservative and Liberal Party, right? In Quebec, it was
Mm,
mostly the same thing for a while. Why it was either between the Liberal Party or between the Parti Québécois. But that's since the 80s. Before the 80s, it was either between the Liberal Party or some kind of version of a conservative party, right? And the conservative party,
mm,
especially during what we call the Great Darkness, la Grande Noirceur, under Duplessis. Um, that at that point, that conservative party, or is Union Nationale as he called it, was
Union
very fascist,
Nationale,
and the
the
new
Union of the
government that,
Naturalists.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the new government, la CAQ, la Coalition Action Québec, so or the Quebec Action Coalition, right?
Hmm.
This is a very conservative party that is very reminiscent of the Duplessis party. So you're
Mm.
calling them a fascist government? It's a
Well,
fascist government, but
you
that
would
takes
have
the
to go
face
into a
of
little bit.
the
You
old
would have to go a
uncle, the
little
old
bit
racist
into.
uncle that's just sweet and just wants
Yeah. Well,
to protect the
Zenzi,
value.
Zenzi, Zenzi. You're talking, and this is not to belittle us over here in the United States, but you're talking to us. You're talking to us over in the United States, and a lot of us don't even get involved in our own politics. So when you talk about foreign politics, there's a little bit you may have to slow down. So you said the new party is very reminiscent of the Duplessis party, and I know I'm
The
sure I slaughtered
National
that, but
Union, the
go
Union
okay. The
Nationale.
national you go into a little bit of. I know I just hijacked the show, fellas, but
No,
you
no,
know
no,
me,
no,
sir.
no.
You
This
know
is
I'm a
yeah. We're trying to
revolutionary.
go. No, let's do
Okay,
this. Yeah.
so go into a little bit of what made up the Union of Nationalists. What was their core ideology or philosophy and their methodology in accomplishing some of their goals, and how do we see it manifest itself in this day and time? If it was clearly recognized that, okay, look, here's some dangers of fascism.
All right. So
So how did it reemerge?
I just want to preface what I'm about to say. If we've got any listeners that are experts in Canadian and Quebec politics, I'm very sorry. I'm most likely going to butcher some dates and butcher some names and butcher some concepts. Me, it's just that's what I learned in school, right? That's what I know from it. But I've certainly that's not something I refresh in my memory lately. But basically, L'Union Nationale, it was a party that prone um, Catholic religious values, right?
Right.
It prone the fact that the only way to protect the French language and protect the French Canadian or Quebecers, because the mot Québécois, right? The word Québécois, the term Québécois to call people from Quebec, that appeared with Le Parti Québécois, right, in the 80s. Before that, we were French Canadians, right? So the Union Nationale, what they, or National Union, right? And no, National Union, right? Not Union Nationalist, but still they were nationalists to some extent. But they were nationalists, but not right because they didn't care about the French Canadian identity, right? They were
Wait a
just
minute. Hold
using
up,
that
Zanzi.
as a talking
Wait a
point,
minute,
right? And saying that
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
order
yeah.
to
I caught
protect
that too. Yeah, yeah.
French,
I caught that too. Wait a minute. Hold up, Yang.
because
Let me
I'm
be
thinking
clear.
this is what the whole argument is about: the French Canadian identity, them being threatened, them feeling that their culture where life was
Yes, but
threatened,
not
and
at
it
that
started
point,
with
right? Not
language.
not at that point,
Okay,
because that was
okay,
in the
okay.
50s, 60s. This whole idea of you've got a French Canadian started in the 80s. Before that, it was the French Canadian identity was used as a way to say, well, we have to protect that. We have to protect our language, right? Because you don't need to talk in English. But in order to do that, and that was the message of the party of Maurice Duplessis, right? In order to do that, you have to subscribe and follow the Catholic values, right? And
Wow.
if you follow those Catholic values about family, about being basically uh,
That's a
agricultural, uh,
theocracy.
exactly, right? So
Oh hell no.
the Union Nationale was very much using concepts of theocracy to
Right.
try and uh, seal together the French Canadian identity with the Catholic identity in order to keep people simple in agricultural, and then those people could be used as cheap labor by the rest of the English Canada and the American companies that would come here. Because
Mm,
those people were told that in order to be a real French Canadian, you have to be simple, you have to be agricultural, you have to be subservient, you have to be a
Wow.
good
mhm,
Catholic, right? And
mhm.
the rest of Canada wasn't
Sound
Catholic. The
like a
rest
good
of Canada
old
was
Baptist
Protestant,
down
right?
here. Hmm.
So basically, what happened is that in the 70s, some intellectual people, as they were called, started to see through that, right? And people like fucking God damn it,
I see your profanity in English is proficient.
no, no, no. Well, when I'm very engaged in conversation, I lose my English to some extent. But some people, like the creator of the Parti Québécois, right? Um,
Mhm,
he he started calling French Canadians in Quebec Québécois, right? Quebecers, and
Quebecois.
he started the first political party that was based around this idea you've got of the separatist or of the nationalist French Canadian, right? His
mhm,
party created this law to protect the French language, and at that time, it was coming from, like you said, a population movement coming
mhm,
from the people realizing that they've been exploited as cheap labor by the rest of Canada, right? But this
mhm,
situation completely changed in between 1980 and 2022, right? So right now,
mhm,
the CAC is bringing back this this fake, I would say, concern for the Quebecois French Canadian identity because it's not a nationalist party. They don't want to separate, right?
mhm,
But they do want people to stay simple and go back to the old values.
mhm.
And during the pandemic, they launched a state of emergency where they don't have to consult any other parties to make any laws or take any decision,
Whoa.
and they still
Mm.
haven't relinquished those powers. So when you say they're
What
fascist,
was
when you
the
say they're reminiscent of the Union Nationale Party, they are.
well? Listen, well,
Very much.
here's my thing. Okay, after the Union Nationale Party, who took who? I guess what I'm asking is how did this particular party come back in power? Apparently, especially if you're
Well,
dealing with a democracy.
well, it's not the
So
same party,
apparently,
right? It's not the same party. So the creator, it's
well,
a new
it's
party.
not the same, right? But they're espousing some of the same values. They have some of the same goals and objectives. So
Well,
apparently, somewhere
the
somebody blew it. You know
well,
what made the people say, "Let's vote this back into power," or this
so,
type of party
oh,
back into power?
well, the party came to be because the Parti Québécois, right after 1995, there were two referendums where we tried to vote ourselves out of Canada. There were one in 1980 and one in 1995. After
And this
1995,
was led by that party. Was those referendums led by that party separation?
Parti Québécois, yeah,
Okay.
not the one
Okay.
that's currently in power, the Parti Québécois, the one that was created by. Oh, man, I always forget. René Lévesque, the one that was created by René Lévesque in 1978 or 74, or no, 1976. I think. And like I
Okay,
said,
and they were a
sorry for
separatist
the
party.
experts
They
in
were
Canadian
advocating and fighting for separation.
debates. But
Yeah, yeah.
the yeah, so this party, right, after
Mhm.
1995 was very divided, and the leader and creator of the party that's currently in power came from that party, but separated from that party because he wasn't for the separation of Quebec, and he was a more conservative part of this party. He thought that the Parti Québécois wasn't conservative enough to some extent. So
Mhm.
because he wanted to stay in Canada, and because he thought the other party wasn't conservative enough, which
Mhm.
was the two main points that separated the Parti Québécois from the Union Nationale, right?
Mhm.
He created his own parti, Coalition Action Québec, which is reminiscent of the Union Nationale. Right?
Okay. Okay. I get it. I get it.
Why
So,
people voted for him? The same reason people voted for Trump. You know,
yeah.
there's a conservative right wing
Why y'all?
movement
Why
that
they?
was
Why?
taking
Because y'all
place
had a
for
black
years.
president.
Huh?
Why they vote? You said the same. Why? Because y'all had a black president. Why they? You wonder
I,
why?
I
Why they
don't
voted
think
for Trump? Some
people
of
voted
ours
for
were
Trump
steeped in
because we had a black
racism. I don't.
president, because Obama couldn't be elected once again, so it wasn't even
Right.
against him, right? So,
Right.
uh,
Some get back. Okay, y'all want to go extreme that way. We're gonna go extreme that. No,
well,
no, really, I get it.
although it could
I
be in response to Trudeau, right? Because we were
yeah,
afraid that the politics of Trudeau were too liberal, so we decided to go with
yeah.
a more conservative approach. So your
At
point
the end of the
about
day, that's probably what it boiled down to, though. And I'm being funny, Zanzi, or it was my attempt at humor. But yeah, really, I think that's like what you said. So apparently, you guys had gotten a little too liberal for the masses. Maybe the economy,
right.
maybe social interaction, crime went up. What happened? I'd like to know what happened that the people said, "Hey, you know what? This liberalism or whatever the hell we're being governed by now. We need more of that conservative, more of that
That old
nationalist, and if
school.
not in separation, but nationalist in pride. We need more of that back. What was the scene like? What made the people say, no, we need the Union Nationale?
Wait, you're talking about the Union
Or
Nationale right now, or about the
not
current
not
party?
not the Union Nationale, the current, but the Le Patequois.
Le Parti Québécois. Okay, because now,
Yeah.
okay, the current party is the CAQ, right? The
That's better. Thank you. I can do CAQ. You with this? La
all right.
Pate Quebec. CAQ. Okay.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
the current party, which is the more conservative that want to stay in Canada, but wants to protect the quote unquote French Canadian identity. What made people vote for that is, I think, the not even uh, that they wanted a more conservative government, is that before the years before that, we had for 10 years a liberal government that okay, so you have to understand that Quebec, the province of Quebec, is considered to be as corrupt as and as infiltrated by organized crime as Sicily.
Mm.
So by the same people, right? So the
Wow.
By the Bonanno family, that's one of the five families in New York, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's a guy called Vito Rizzuto, right? That killed a guy in New York from another family in the 70s, and to hide the guy, they sent him in Quebec, right? And that was exactly at the time where the Révolution Tranquille was taking place, before the Parti Québécois appeared, where people wanted to get the church out of the state and blah blah blah. So we saw a fucking perfect little hole to go crawl in, and basically in the government, the whenever the Liberal Party was in power, you had the the fucking Italian mafia in power at that point, right? Because
Wow.
that's so you had two parties. You had the Parti Québécois, which were the nationalists that wanted to separate, and you had the Liberals, which was a party infiltrated by organized crime. So we had the Liberals for 10 years with Jean Charest, which, by the way, is running to be the fucking leader of the Conservative Party of Canada right now. But we
Damn,
had Jean
how's that
Charest for
work?
10 years. And
How's he go from
oh yeah,
liberal to
because they switched
conservative? We're
parties like
gonna
fucking Doritos, right? So this guy we had for 10 years, and then he wanted to up the cost for schooling, which are frozen in Quebec. So he wanted to up them significantly. So, and I was in college at that time, and we went on strike, and we fucked shit up in the streets, and we were 300,000 walking in the streets of Montreal, in front of his house, in front of his office, and we pushed it out of office, and we elected the Parti Québécois again, the first woman to become leader of Quebec, Pauline Marois, and also the first leader of Quebec to get shot at
Wow.
during she got shot at by a fucking AK-47 in a speech. So people, in response of us electing a woman, I think then when he arrived looking like the old uncle, racist uncle, right? We all felt like, oh yes, that's what we have to go back to, not another woman. That's my impression of what went on. Because
Right.
yes, people in Quebec are, like you said, they don't understand how the political system works. They don't understand voting. They're very easy to sway in any direction.
Wow.
Well, I think that now I'm gonna ask a personal question. So, are you from Quebec?
Yes, but I'm First Nation. I don't see myself as my
Okay,
first
that's what I was
language is
gonna ask.
French, and there's reasons for that. But I don't culturally. I don't associate. I don't identify with the Quebecois culture.
Can you
Okay.
explain why, Zanzi? Explain why you don't.
Well, we're not going to talk about the economy of Roe versus Wade. Eh?
Oh, I mean, well, this is the arena, baby. This is how we do. Sometimes we get in the. I mean, it kind of coincides because we're talking about conservative values versus liberal values, and to answer Zanzi's question, Trump once upon a time was a liberal, and he, I'm saying he ran with the Clintons, so it's not that far fetched, liberal becoming a conservative and vice versa, Yanga. So yeah, it's happened here too.
Yeah.
You seem a
Well,
little
I'll
surprised by
ask
it.
him. He may have prepared for Roe versus Wade, so I ask
Okay,
a
that's fine.
question
Okay.
related to that. Zanzi had made a
Well, I
statement
mean, in the
earlier.
context of a debate, I'm prepared, but the questions you're asking me are right now are about myself, so it's not something I have to prepare for, right? It's just that
Right.
I'm
Okay.
very glad to talk about that if you want to. It's just that it's not the title of the video, but that's fine. If everybody's okay with that, I'm okay with that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, hey,
Like I said, a lot of them. Well, like Black Sun said, they're used to the arena uncensored. We can go back to some Roe versus Wade in the last couple minutes. I love to have you on, being a revolutionary, being a student of revolution, and the catalyst to revolution. It's very interesting to hear, my foreign counterparts, their struggles related, but especially French related, because French. If you study revolution, the French are all through the fucking revolution. Y'all
yes,
feisty as
sir.
hell. They're getting together. Tighten up there, Zanzi. But so yeah, I'm super curious as to why the people went one way or another. What was the dynamic? What was the charisma with these particular leaders that made the people embrace them? Such as, like you said, I forget you were talking about the crime lord that had come to Canada and became a political hero. What must
well,
the
no,
climate have been, or
okay.
what was he advocating?
So right, Vito Rizzuto, right? There was never a member of parliament, so there was never a minister. There was never a prime minister. There was never maybe senators, I can say, but there was never an elected member of the government that was a made man. If so that's clear, right?
Okay. They just
There was
sponsored
never.
and supported particular
They
parties.
just accepted little brown envelopes all the time.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's what they did. It's
Yeah.
and the way it was put forward in Quebec, because that's specifically in Ontario and Quebec, right? So in Ontario and Quebec, you've got a lot of presence from before it was the bikers, right? But then when Rizzuto arrived, then the Italian mafia took really a big spot, and right now they're kind of in balance, working together with some other gangs, more street level gangs, right? But
Mhm.
the only one that had a political influence was the Italian organized crime. The bikers just had weapons and a fuck you attitude, but they never
Mhm.
infiltrated the government. So what we realize is that the main part where they were playing, right, the money side of the government, right, it was through construction.
Mhm.
We realized that there was what we call a commission Charbonneau, the Charbonneau Commission, right, which was a
Mhm.
basically an investigation that that put it all in front of everybody. Even then, though, most people in Quebec still don't believe it, but it was they were all convicted, right? So I mean, it's true, even if you don't want to believe it. So yeah,
Mhm.
through construction, through pot de vin, right, or basically bribes, they were infiltrated in all the legislation and all the public contracts. That's why when you our
Nice.
roads are shit and our infrastructures are shit, and building a bridge in Quebec cost fucking $7 billion, while the same bridge in fucking the neighboring province cost 7 million, right? So it's because the
Mhm.
government and the organized crime all take this all take those public funds for themselves, right? And
Mhm.
the reason they were able to do that is because the Urizuto, the guy was the architect of that, right? He was the head of, well, he wasn't the head of any family at that point. He was just a fucking killer from the Banano family who was sent to hide out in Montreal and figured out, well, shit, I can build a family over here by myself, and he did. And this family is considered to be as powerful, or at some point was as powerful of as all of the five families in New York, right, combined. But
Mm.
because they were so involved in the government, in the state government of Quebec and partly Ontario.
Well, not
But
only that, you have less competition because with the five families, you have them to keep check and
all
balance
in
of
New
each other.
York,
Huh?
they're all in the same goddamn city, while
Right
seeing
is
different
right, right.
provinces,
So with
right?
that, yeah, you can't grow. But if you just have one family in Quebec, then yeah, they're going to grow faster than any family in New York because all those five families in New York, like I said, they
There
they
was a
got a
vacuum of power because the state was infiltrated by the church in the 60s and in 50s, right? And
hmm
now that we were purging out the church because we realized that they kept us subservient to Catholicism, right?
yes,
There was a power vacuum, and you arrived just at the right time to being sucked by it, right? And so it's yeah, that's what happened, right? So
right,
what prompted the revolution in the 70s was a couple of people of French descent having their parents scrape enough money to send them to fucking school so that they can learn that they've been exploited for about fucking 50 years and
right,
start revolutions around that, right?
right.
And those revolutions were done not necessarily in the best of ways and the most consensuous of ways, and the power vacuum got filled by fucking rats, right?
Right.
And then that led to almost a revolution in 2012 with the students, because the revolution in the 70s started also with students, right? It started
Right.
in France. There was a student revolution, and then that moved to Quebec, and those students of French descent, that was the first one to get to those schools. They kept the movement going and for a long time, and they kept it going strong. But the power vacuum was filled by organized crime. And
Right.
when the students in 2012 started or tried to start this movement again, uh, well, it fizzled out because of promises and fear of, you know, when you go to a protest and as soon as you get hit by a baton or that you get some pepper on
hmm
yourself, you start crying and turn around. You're not gonna fucking achieve anything.
Right.
So it's yeah.
All
I
right.
hope that answers your question about how revolution got started here. I don't know if I
A-
have
Absolutely. Now, here I have a question. Now, does the church play as much as a significant role as it used to? As it has it started to gain with the coming back of that party? Has it gained its influence
uh-huh.
again?
Good question.
You ask great questions, Yanga. That's something I've noticed about you, and I appreciate that. So yes and
Appreciate
no,
it.
right? So one of the laws that's considered super racist and to protect our identity that has been passed 2 years ago was about religious signs, right? So, be it the niqab or the hijab or any religious sign, except those of Catholicism, are unacceptable in the public space and in the public function. But
Wow.
the crucifix is going to stay in the parliament because that's part of our culture, right? So no, it's not as much as it was with Union Nationale, right? But they do have a little preferential treatment for the Catholic faith, you know.
Of course.
Mhm.
So none of you Muslims coming up to goddamn Quebec with them hijabs there, mug yank.
Or Indians
That's what it.
or whatever you are,
Or
if you're not
anyway, right,
Christian.
right, right.
Yeah.
That's about it's that's reminiscent of America. It's almost the same.
Yes.
Officially, there is separation of church and state, but you can see the peripheral treatment towards Christians just in everything, and that's all the way down to architecture, social interactions, just everything. You can still see that is still the dominant
That's
spiritual
right.
understanding and the most tolerant if there's going to be any form of spiritual expression.
To be
So,
fair,
with,
Canada is not like that. Canada is very multicultural, and state and church are very separated. But Quebec is the outlier on that front. That's why we're saying,
Uh,
okay.
oh, yeah.
hmm
so that coincides
So how
actually.
did so Quebec is like Texas, just doing its own thing, wants to be its own thing. So
Separatist
how did
history, big separatist history is Texas too, right? So there's some
yeah,
similarities.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how did Quebec
The way Quebec
be
doesn't
this
recognize that their land is native land, the same way that Texas thinks that Mexico is belongs to them.
right? Right. The same way. So how did Quebec become so in its philosophy so separatist, so individual? Is it because that's where the majority of the French settled when
Well,
they,
now
as
you have
opposed
to
to the
go back
rest
to
of Canada? Why
the
is
1500s to answer that question, right? You have to
Mhm.
the debate between John Hebot and Jacques Cartier, right? Who was first, the English or the French?
Oh, okay. 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 So
That's the whole
so
thing here. And my
yeah.
people, the First Nation, we've been here for fucking 30,000 years, man. So we look at the French
What
arguing
is
with
the
the English
First
people.
Nation? I heard you say that before. What is the First Nations,
First
Andy?
Nations in Canada is what you in the United States would call Native Americans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We call them
So
in Canada. They're
what
called
is there
huh?
in Canada? They're called what?
In Canada, right? Because all those names, Native American, Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, right? I would say that I'm carrying on, and you wouldn't understand what I mean, right? So we say First
Mhm.
Nation, we say Inuit, we say right. So
Mhm.
at some point we call them Indians, right? But the people
Yeah.
were
Now I've
here
heard
first,
Inuit.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
The
Mhm.
first
I
humans in
like that.
America.
Right.
And
Now
but
I
all our
respect that.
names,
Now
all our different names, right? My people they call Genigan right? And
Mhm.
that just means people of the Flint. And Genya, that just means people, humans, right? And all the
Mhm.
Native American or First Nation tribes or communities, invariably their name most of the time means the people.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
interesting that we call them First Nations or Native American, while we could just call them people.
Right. Right. Now in America, the Native Americans, they have movements. One of them that just pops into my mind is the American Indian movement, AIM,
Hmm.
which is a deliberate, specific movement for the issues of Native Americans. Now, do the First Nation up there? Do you have specific movements that's
Oh yeah,
related to the Aboriginal peoples? Yeah.
absolutely.
So, what is the goal? Is it to regain the land, reclaim the land, political power, economic power? What do the
Uh,
First Nation people desire?
So that's interesting. That's a very complex issue that would require many hours of discussion, and most likely for me to be organized a little bit more preparation, in the sense that
Okay,
that's something that's
respect.
very close to myself, and that I would want to do justice to it, right? But as a quick
Mhm.
summary of it, um, what both party agree on that we should call what we're uh, working towards is reconciliation. So the only thing that both parties will agree on is that we're working towards reconciliation. Now, what
Mhm.
does that mean? If you ask most, because we're not a monolith, right? We're about 200
Mhm.
different nations, right? With very complex societies
Hmm.
that diverge and that are very diverse in the way they govern themselves, right? And that's why I'm saying it's going to take its own show that I'll be glad to do with you guys if you want to, that will
Yeah, gang is
explain the
down with it. I'm down
difference,
with it. I'm
starting
down.
that will explain the difference between the traditional tribal governments and the band
Mhm.
councils, right? The band
Mhm.
councils being something that's been created by Canadian legislation, and the traditional governments being something that's thousands of years old, right? But
Mhm.
the so you have to, before starting to talk about the real revendications and where the fight is, we have to understand this whole context. But basically what most nations are asking, most native nations are asking, is for self-determination,
Mm.
autodetermination, right? And that comes with land, indeed.
Ah,
What the Canadian government are trying to sell
Wow.
about is money, 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 money,
Mhm.
sweet cash money, always. You know. So yeah,
Wow. So yeah,
but we
listen,
agree
the
that all
revolution
this is
is
the
the
fight towards
same.
reconciliation.
Well, the revolution is the same everywhere, man. We're all fighting for self determination, that being manifested and materialized through land. I think, I can identify, empathize, sympathize, man, everything, even support that struggle for the First Nation to be able to have their right to self determination. That's awesome. Man, we're winding down, aren't we, son? Man, this
yeah,
has
but
been a
one.
great Xanthi. This has been a pleasure, man. I didn't know, you were such a wealth of information. I really enjoyed our conversation, bro.
Well, I really enjoyed it too, even if it wasn't exactly the subject I was prepared
Right.
for. It was every bit fun as it could have been, and I appreciate that. Thank you
We're,
very much.
we're going to give you guys an opportunity to come back and revisit that, I guess. You and son will be able to work that out and talk it out.
Yeah, yeah,
To
yeah,
be
yeah,
honest, there
yeah.
weren't much left to say except present numbers on the economical side, and so that's something that can be indulged in maybe 20, 30 minutes at any other time. So.
Well, Zanzi, I think, and I know Yango will agree with me. I think we're more interested in the self determination, and we want to learn more about what do you say, Yanga? Because I mean, yeah, we winding down, but I mean, we just opened up a whole another chapter into
Yeah,
some
yeah,
interesting
absolutely. We do.
Yeah, I can.
man.
We can try and organize something if you want, and I can prepare a more thorough presentation on that subject.
Yanga, you got the
Yeah,
floor, man.
let's work it out, man. Let's get some. Let's have the brother back, work it out. Because I'm curious. It's very interesting.
I
I
am too now.
appreciate Zanzi taking the time sharing with us. Me, I am one who really believes, endorses, and supports information, knowledge, and especially international knowledge when you're a revolutionary because you're an internationalist, and just this exposure to our people to hear that our struggles aren't as different as we
Right.
believe. Freedom loving people all around the globe want the same thing: self determination and a place to
Yep.
practice self determination, the end of exploitation and oppression. And it's the same fight, just different names. La Croix, La Croix, La Croix. You know, and, I ain't gonna say La Croix. Let me be careful. No disrespect about Ansomadi. That's some voodoo stuff. But you know, um, just basically learning it's the same struggle, different players. So this has been interesting. So I look
Yes.
forward to having a brother back and being able to rap.
I completely agree with what you just said, Yanga, in the sense that I've you know, I work nights, right? I really enjoy working nights, and what comes from that is that in Quebec, at least, it's a job that nobody wants to do. So it's usually the disenfranchised that do it, right? So I work
Mhm.
most of my working life with immigrants, and I love speaking with people. And I spoke with people from everywhere around the world: Africa, the Middle East, Asia, name it, South America. And you're very right that the struggle is the same for everyone. We're all looking
Nice.
just to be able to be humans in peace, without being entraved
Mhm.
on by others wanting to garner power for other their other interests, right? So it's yeah, the fight for human freedom is the same wherever you are, whoever you are. That's very true.
Well, Zanzi, is this a good time for you? 2 o'clock? I mean, is this Sunday or
Yeah,
you
Sunday 2 o'clock is
Sunday two
for
o'clock? Okay.
well, it depends. Not next week. Next week
Okay.
it's
Okay.
my niece's birthday, so I'm gonna be
Okay.
gone
No
the whole
problem.
weekend. The weekend after, 2 p.m. on Sunday should be perfect. Yes,
Okay. And is that good for you, Yanga?
Yeah.
the 23rd.
Okay, so not next Sunday, but every Sunday after. Hopefully, Zanzi. I mean, he says 2 o'clock Sunday is good. So, Yanga, does that sound good with you? I mean, is that
We'll see.
um,
Let's see. We'll talk about it. Give me a call, man. We'll talk about it. Let's end the
okay? Okay.
show because we
Okay.
got
Yeah. Yeah.
people
Yeah.
holding on and we're conducting business on the show. Right. So let's end
Okay.
the show.
Oh,
Let's
too
wrap it
live.
out.
That's true, man.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Zanzi, man. Thank you, Yanga, man. We are
Man,
man,
anytime.
great show. And man, I want to thank the chat. Y'all hit the subscribe, like, and leave a comment.
Yes.
And yeah, man, man, Zanzi, man, welcome on board, brother. It's this man. We
Hey,
got
man,
more to
great show.
talk about.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been my
Yes.
greatest pleasure again, and it's been gonna be a joy to come back again if you invite me.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're always
Absolutely.
invited, brother. Yeah, you're always invited.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, just I tell people just hit the link. Hit the link, jump in. Don't be shy,
Yeah.
y'all.
We
Yeah.
plan on seeing. We plan on seeing a lot of you, brother.
Yes,
On
sir.
not just talking about Quebec on them, but weighing in, bringing your. I like your style. I like
Yeah.
your observation and your input. So not just on Quebec and where you're from, but weighing in on a variety of the topics that you will find us discussing on the program. So I look forward to seeing you as a regular part,
Yes, sir.
jumping up on the panel and weighing in.
I do
Yeah, that's
have
what. Yeah.
many
I-
opinions.
Okay, good, good.
Okay. Listen, and that's cool, but bring your tough skin with your opinions. It's the arena uncensored, baby. It's a blood sport. It's the arena.
My
So,
schooling, my official schooling and degrees are in philosophy, right? And one of the
uh,
things that we reproach to philosophy in school is that it's too aggressive, it's too based around rhetorics, right? So
uh,
I've been trained in this environment.
great.
I've got the thickest skin I can have in regards to that. Very little can offend me, except homophobia and racism. Those are two subjects that kind of
Yes,
rub me the wrong way.
Okay.
absolutely. Dig that. All right. Listen, I'm out, fellas, man. It's been a great show. I'll catch you guys, son. We'll wrap, man. Maybe we end up
Yes,
putting on
sir.
something tomorrow or something.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Zanzi. Hey, we look forward to seeing you back here again, Zanzi. Thank you, man. It was an honor.
My pleasure.
All right. All right, y'all. We out. Peace.
Peace.